welcome to the Jack and Ian show. Today on the show, we got a special guest with us. We got Austin Flanagan. He is another student here at TCU. He has a show that you can find Mondays at 6 to 7 p.m. on KTCU The Choice. And he is the host of FrogPodLive. That's the name of the show. You can find him there. Also on social media platforms if you want to look him up after we're done here. Austin, thank you so much for joining us. You ready to talk some football?
Oh, yeah. Thank you guys for having me on. Yeah, it was a wild weekend. It's been a wild couple of weeks. Excited to get started and talk about this. Got a lot to talk about.
We certainly do. I guess first off, to kind of introduce you a little bit. You're not from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I'm kind of curious, like, was TCU always a team you had interest in? Were they kind of your childhood team, or were you kind of a fan of another team as a kid?
It's a good question. So my uncle actually played football here at TCU in the 80s. And growing up, I was exposed to TCU. My early childhood, I was an Illinois fan. I'm from Nickville, Illinois, which is a suburb, West Chicago. So I get a lot of Illinois, a lot of Wisconsin, and way too much Notre Dame. So those were like kind of like the schools I had focused on. Never really fell in love with any of the teams, but just enjoyed watching them. I was always more of an NFL Bears fan growing up. But when TCU made their historic run in 2010, actually, they played Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, and my aunt was in a equestrian rider for Wisconsin. My uncle played football here. So our whole entire family went out to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Beautiful, beautiful scenery. Like after that game, college football for me just took off. And then with that, TCU as well. So I guess you could say that Tank Carter is the reason why I'm here, because if he doesn't block that pass from Scott Tolzien, I'm probably not here. Probably Wisconsin, honestly. At the end of that game, before that game, our family tailgate, I said, whoever wins this game, that's where I'm going to go to college. Keep in mind, I was in 5th grade, didn't know the college process, didn't know how good of a school Wisconsin TCU were. So kind of called my shot there. But that's just kind of how I got to, being a TCU fan and how I ended up here.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I asked that because I didn't know, a lot of, like you mentioned, Notre Dame fans in that area. I had no idea if, you just happened to wind up at TCU or if you childhood team. I'm kind of surprised the childhood team being from Illinois. That's super cool, though. Oh, yeah. I guess that story, to say the least. Now, I guess, talking about TCU football present day, you mentioned the Rose Bowl, all those awesome TCU teams that we got to see. But TCU's now kind of entering a new territory, with Sonny Dykes now taking over. Gary Patterson was here forever. What are your personal expectations for this new staff, and what they might bring to the table? And then I guess kind of on top of that, if you can tack on at the end, I mean, we still don't have a defensive coordinator. You heard anything about that?
I am hearing from sources that we're expecting to have our guy probably by Wednesday night at the very latest. So expect some things to go down in that period of time. I'm hearing Gillespie from Tulsa. But if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I said that the fact that we've waited this long is a good thing, because I believe that we're really taking this hire seriously. It's probably the most serious hire we have. And, I honestly do think that whoever defensive coordinator was coaching last weekend. So I talked about Gillespie. He wasn't coaching, but another guy they're talking about is Dan Schumann, who's the co-defensive coordinator for Georgia. He's being talked about. What it seems like is those two are the front runners. And now that Manny Diaz just got fired this morning from Miami, I don't know how serious he's going to be in the mix, but they're definitely going to tap in and talk to him, because Manny Diaz, his defensive coordinating career was very successful at the U and his other stops before that. So that's kind of my expectation for the defensive side of the ball. My expectations for this regime, it's going to be fun to watch. I think TCU recently, especially in my 4 years, offensively, it wasn't the best. And considering we've had guys like Jalen Reagor, Zach Evans, Quentin Johnston, Tay Barber, I'm trying to think of Darius Anderson, Sewell Alalua. You had guys that had that big play effect, but we didn't really get the offense that maximized their potential. And I do think that Sonny Dykes will be able to do that with whoever's behind there. These SMU teams we've seen from him have been high scoring. They just don't play defense. So that's why I think the defensive hire is taking so long, because we know we're going to score points, but can we stop teams from scoring points? And the Big 12 is turning into a very strong defensive league with Baylor and Oklahoma State, what they did this past weekend in Arlington. That was a great defensive matchup. So you can score points in the Big 12, but you're also going to be able to stop teams, because the defense still wins championships in this league.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure.
And again, with defenses, really taking control of the Big 12, I think it's interesting, looking at Sonny Dykes, just like you talked about, it doesn't seem like his teams really put up the fight defensively, but offensively, it's going to be a great game. And so that kind of leads us into the next question. So when looking at the options that TCU had, what do you think about TCU choosing Sonny Dykes? Do you think he's the right guy for the job, or do you think we should have gone for someone different?
I'll go on record saying that when Gary first got hired, I didn't want Sonny Dykes. I thought that the way Donati presents everything, he said this is a top 15 job in college football. I do believe that TCU is a very coveted football job. It just should be with the DFW Metroplex you can recruit. But I just wanted a little bit more out of TCU, make that big splash higher. That was my first instincts. More I researched it, I realized more that Dykes, I'm not going to use the word safe hire, but I think Dykes was the most, it made the most sense for TCU because he can recruit DFW very well. And I always said, if we do get Dykes, it matters who the coordinators are. And he's brought Garrett Riley with him. He's brought Samples and Carrington, who've done a great job on the recruiting front. So I think that fans are going to be weary about Sonny for a while. It's definitely going to take some getting used to. The recruiting is going to be awesome, but they're definitely going to be questioning the on-the-field stuff and whether he can win the big games. It's been his biggest critique. I mean, when you really think about it, Sonny Dykes' biggest wins as a head coach, all three of them really have came inside M&G Carter Stadium. 2 wins against TCU and an Armed Forces Bowl win. So if he can win the big games and avoid the reputation he kind of had beforehand, I think it'd be a great hire. I honestly think he wants to be here long term, as opposed to guys like Billy Napier or Dion, who honestly had their eyes set on either going to the SEC or going to Florida schools. But you want longevity. We had Gary Patterson for 21 years. I think Dykes is going to be here long term. We can succeed the way we want to succeed. And I still think Dykes wants to be here because he's a Texas guy and he knows the ins and outs of DFW Metroplex in the state of Texas, high school football. So I do believe that if this hire does go right, it would have been the best possible solution for TCU.
Do you think
No,
that
totally.
Sonny is going to be given a longer or short leash with this?
Judging by his relationship with Donati and how I've seen him kind of interact, I would say he's a longer leash than people are expecting. I think that next year's expectations for TCU fans just make a bowl game and look good with, not look good, but look competent with it. Because the offense this year, we can all agree, it struggled at times, was inconsistent. Even though it was a really good, explosive offense, there were times where it was just not what we needed, and the defense is a whole different story. But I do believe that as long as Dykes can show improvement, it's going to take a while to get his guys in, see what everything's like. I think he'll have a longer leash, people think. I say he'll have at least 2.5 years to show what he can do before I would think a hot seat would go on.
I got you.
So going back to the previous question, you kind of talked about how Gary Patterson was that long-term solution for TCU for such a while, up until this year, obviously. So what were your thoughts on TCU parting ways with Gary Patterson and kind of what happened earlier this season?
Growing up a TCU fan, Gary Patterson is all I've known my whole entire life. Even before I was a TCU fan, there has yet to be a game coached in my lifetime by TCU football, not with Gary Patterson. I'm assuming that's the same for you guys. And it's tough when you have someone that's built so much for the school. Because like TCU before Gary Patterson, I try to communicate this to people on campus. We should appreciate Gary for all he did, because if it weren't for Gary Patterson, TCU is not the school it is today. You could say that football doesn't impact academics and the school itself, but obviously it does. You see what Saban has done for the face of Alabama. You see what Kirby Smart and Georgia have done. Iowa with Kirk Ferentz. The football team feeds, any athletic sport, it feeds into the school more, has the biggest impact. But with Gary Patterson, his time was up. I do honestly believe that his style of play and how he runs a program kind of got outpaced with college football. You got the transfer portal now, you got NIL, you got this, it's a new game. It's not the same game it was 10 years ago. And it's going to keep changing. And we need a coach that was going to adapt. And Gary was strictly just stuck in his ways. So I honestly think that as much as it hurt TCU fans that this had to happen, could have been done better by Jeremiah Donati? Yeah, to an extent. But at the end of the day, the reports did come out. Gary was offered the rest of the season, and he said no, which I thought was actually a big man move by him, because he understands that nowadays you got to start the process early. Because look all that's happened since he got fired. We've seen so many P5 jobs open up. So I think it worked out best for us, and we look back on it and said that was the right thing to do.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you know, because Sonny Dykes is coming into this job and he's bringing in a lot of his previous staff at SMU, like Samples, right? What do you think is a benefit of kind of having a bit of a clean house when it comes to coaching staff, especially since Patterson has been there for so long?
It's a chance to install a new culture. That's the biggest thing, I think, for me. I talked with Sonny Dykes in my interview later tonight. I kind of asked him like what he wants his TCU team to be known about, and I'll let you guys hear that interview tonight. I won't give away his answer, but I do think it kind of ties into what he's trying to accomplish here. And with Gary, we had that defensive prowess, low key, built like we're not going to go after the big names. We're going to go after the lesser guys or the lower end 4-stars and kind of build them up. Sonny Dykes already has Quinn Ewers on campus in about, what time is it, 2:50? Yeah, he's pretty much either on his way or on campus right now. And with Gary Patterson, Quinn Ewers was never going to step foot on this campus because that's just not the kind of guy Gary was. And I respect him for it. He stayed true to his roots. But now we got Sonny Dykes. We're going to start seeing some big names at least talking about TCU. And once you get talked about by these high-end 5-stars, 4-stars that are not only big deals in the state of Texas, but around the country, that adds more spotlight to TCU and opens up paths for guys to come in. And we've already seen it on the social media page as well. We helicoptered this man in and on the 50-yard line, and we had the band and all the other stuff. Like, that was not happening under Gary. So now I think that TCU become a lot more flashy, which is good. We have the uniforms for it. We have the stadium for it. We have the kind of mindset for it. So that's what I think is ultimately going to be the main result of this, regardless of what happens on the field.
Right. You talked about, I guess, getting all these new guys in. And one thing that we've kind of that TCU hadn't had to deal with too much is a bunch of players leaving. However, there is obviously one that has gotten pretty confusing with Zach Evans, a guy that was really explosive. He kind of got hurt, didn't see him much towards the end of the season. But to start like that SMU game, he was awesome. He had a couple other great performances early on in the season. But it's kind of gotten, confusing with him. It came out that he was going to enter the transfer portal, but then people are like, wait, he might stay. And then yesterday they're like, he's in Oxford, Mississippi, but he still might. Can you shed any light on what's going on there, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, Zach's keeping this pretty private, and I respect him for it. He has said that he's entering the portal, just basically look around. I think it's a smart move of him, to see what everyone has to offer out there. And, I think we have kind of the home field advantage with him. He knows what TCU's about. He's visited these other big schools before. Like, he's been to Georgia and Tennessee, Florida when he was a senior in high school. So he knows what their pitch is. The Oxford one is interesting with Lane Kiffin. I'm hearing reports that Lebby, the offensive coordinator for Ole Miss, might be going to Oklahoma with Brent Venables. We'll see what that does. I do believe that if Lebby leaves Ole Miss, Zach's not going there at all. But I still think there's a strong chance he comes back. I know a lot of people outside of the inner TCU circle are thinking he's good as gone, but I would not be surprised at all if Zach Evans came back to TCU, because I do believe that he understands what Samples and Carrington are building here. He has one more year because we all know he's going to go to the draft after 3 years. Like, he's just that kind of talent. But I think that in this offense and with the team that we're building, he can truthfully thrive anywhere and get the draft stock. Because at the end of the day, this guy wants to go to the league, and he's going to do his best to put him in the best draft stock. And honestly, in the Sonny Dykes offense, I think that he can do what he needs to do to get to as high as he can on the draft boards.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll be interesting to see what he does, in the coming weeks, and because of how big an impact he could possibly have, like you mentioned, in this Sonny Dykes offense, for sure.
Now, with Sonny Dykes and his staff coming in, obviously it's a huge change from Gary Patterson, right? With this kind of rebranding of TCU and TCU football, and as players are starting to commit to teams or drop commitments and commit to TCU, what does that do in terms of recruiting players to have them come over to TCU?
It's just going to show them that, like I said earlier, it's just different. You have all these guys, like everyone knows who TCU is. And, you know, it kind of started with Zach Evans coming here and all that. Players in Texas, I don't know where you guys are from. Where are you guys from again? Sorry.
California.
California.
I'm from Memphis, Tennessee.
From Memphis. Okay. So like in Texas, the teams that everyone grows up hearing about the most are UT and A&M. Those are the big state schools. You get to play in front of 100,000. You know, so that's the main draw. Every Texas recruit is going to be listening to those guys. And then if you're in the Houston area, you're probably going to be listening to LSU a little bit more because it's another school, big state school, play in front of 100,000. But what I think this regime can do, and you see all these players, you know, flipping their commitments and, you know, seeing them post visits at TCU, it's like, okay, yeah, you can be one of 1,000 at UT and A&M and have all these, you know, expectations going in. But you go to TCU, and we can both attest to this, it's a different vibe being a TCU athlete than it is at A&M or UT. You know, A&M and UT, they're 50,000 plus. We just hit 10,000 this year. So I guess to say is that if you truthfully want to be the big man on campus from the start, you got to come here and you got to be able to, because TCU, while it does have a history, it's not the history of UT and A&M, even though, fun fact, A&M's history is not as rich as they make it seem to be. When you really look at it deep, they're not as good as they made it out to be. But you come here and you can honestly start a trend, and a trend that can actually last. Because let's all remember, before Nick Saban got to Alabama, they were losing to Louisiana Monroe. And now Alabama is considered the king. So, and I always say to my friends, every empire falls. Tennessee fell, you know, Indiana basketball fell. Every empire is going to fall and someone has to take over. Can it be TCU? Who knows? So I think when all these recruits are like flipping and, you know, shining light on TCU and saying, oh, we're going to go and give DFW's Big 12 team a chance, I think it could potentially spark something that could last not just next 4 or 5 years, but potentially next 15, 20 years.
Sure.
Do you think the NIL stuff helps being in a big market like this compared to like College Station, even though they're a bigger school?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I've had that question myself, and you know, you research it. Yes, DFW has a lot more. We have Fortune 500 companies. We have all this, and we have a alumni base that, while it's not very big, it does have some pretty heavy hitters. You know, the former Nike COO is a TCU alum. Jeff Bezos' brother is a TCU alum. We got people coming up in the works at NFL Network and Fox and all that other stuff. So you've got people in this alumni base, but it's not as big. You go to A&M, yeah, College Station, there's no company basing themselves out of College Station, except for like a few small insurance firms. But being in DFW allows athletes to be centralized. You know, no, it's not a struggle to get to TCU. You fly into DFW or worst case scenario, Love Field, and you're coming into one of the fastest growing cities in America. And we're going to see in the next 20 years, DFW is going to be unrecognizable, in my opinion, in 20 years, due to how many jobs are coming here, how many companies are moving here. And with that growth, TCU goes too. So while College Station is always going to be College Station, that's just their identity, that's who they're going to be. DFW goes up and TCU can ride that coattail of DFW's rise, and that can breed in more NIL deals. And I do believe that with a school like TCU, where it's a small private school, you know, it's unique with the mascot and its color scheme, that could be very appealing for NIL companies that are seeing suited fit. And as a TCU alumni base grows, eventually we'll hit 100,000. Then that's going to breed more. And then you got a lot of alumni out in California. You got a good base in Chicago, Kansas City. So that allows for them to honestly expand outside of just DFW, because A&M, all their NIL deals are coming either in Houston or College Station. In 10 years, we could be talking about a TCU athlete getting an NIL deal with some coffee shop out in California. So I do believe that in this day and age, TCU and allowing NIL, we're going to be on the right side of it, even though many might not think it right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've certainly had similar thoughts to that. I feel like being in a big market should be used as an advantage when it comes to, you know, players getting paid for advertisements and stuff like that. That's just a great opportunity. And I think TCU, if they play their cards right, should be able to capitalize, kind of just like you said. So what are you making? Obviously, we mentioned NIL deals, but there's a lot of other stuff that's changing in college football right now. The least of which is, you know, Texas, Oklahoma going to the SEC. And then also talking about some of the coaching changes that have happened. Lincoln Riley going to USC. You know, it feels like a million different coaches have left. Dan Mullen out at Florida. You know, I could go on, obviously, but what do you make of all that and just how everything's changing? And what do you think we might look up in 5 years and see college football like?
Well, it definitely gives you a look at how much college football is really meaning not only to universities, but just the cities that they're in. We know the game of college football is changing. That's not a fact. The NIL transfer portal, talking about all that. But now you're hearing about, when you talk about Lincoln Riley leaving OU, a school that had dominated the Big 12 up until this year. And frankly, they were 1 or 2 plays away in Bedlam away from probably winning another conference championship. And he goes to USC, a team that didn't even make a bowl game this year. I think coaches are starting to realize that when you really think about it, the head football coach at a Power 5 school is pretty much the most important man at 99% of schools. I can only think of a few schools where the football coach is the number one guy, and that's probably Indiana, Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse. You got very few schools like this. But their contracts are absolutely insane. Mario Cristobal's contract at Miami is 10 years, around $80-85 million. That's a lot of money. And you got schools who are trying to modernize themselves and offer the best possible experience to prospective students. What's a better selling point than be like, oh, you have one of the best college football environments for college football teams in the country? It all comes back to what Nick Saban did with Alabama. I mean, he literally, this comes down to him. He took Alabama, who had history in the past, but itself hadn't really not been identity and a brand yet. And he turned it into a place where you have kids from Denver, Colorado, Chicago, Illinois, wanting to go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My older cousin will tell you, not a single person in the Chicagoland area is really considering Alabama. All of a sudden, they start winning national championships, and it's a top 10 most attended school in the Chicagoland area. So these schools are, it's more than just the football itself. It's starting to realize that, oh, if we get a good head coach, that can also help out our university even more and make it even better. So I think it shows the value of college football. And when you ask me what I see it in 5 years being, I think it's going to be third overall in the nation in viewership, right behind the NFL and the NBA. I think it's already past Major League Baseball, and the way that's going, it's going to surpass them tenfold. And we already get more coverage in the NHL. So they're going to start running this like a business, because it frankly is. It's going to become one of the power sports in America. It already is, but from a financial standpoint, with all the new media rights deals, what you're about to see in 4 or 5 years, the media rights deals are going to be insane. You're going to see Fox paying a lot of money, ESPN's going to be paying a lot of money, and from what I'm hearing, streaming services are going to get involved. So who knows if the Big 12's home might be Apple TV or Amazon Prime. And that's crazy to think that even 4 years ago when I started college, that you would be seeing Amazon Prime trying to get college football games, but you never know. So that just lets you know that this sport is changing a lot, and it's going to change how colleges operate as well.
For sure. What do you think about, I kind of mentioned conference realignment in the previous question there, just talking about college football as a whole, but I guess on a small level, talking about TCU, how does adding Houston and Cincinnati and UCF and BYU and taking away Oklahoma and Texas from the equation impact TCU moving forward?
Most people would say it's a negative, just because you lose the blue blood names. But I always try to challenge my casual fans. You got to look deeper into this. Texas, as fun as it is to play Texas and to experience what Texas brings, who's been more successful in the past 5-10 years? Cincinnati or Texas? Cincinnati. You can honestly say that BYU's been pretty similar with Texas. BYU's produced more first-round quarterbacks than Texas has in the past 10 years. I know it's Zach Wilson, that's it. And you also got Taysom Hill. So you got to think about it like that, is that while we're losing the image in Oklahoma and Texas, we're actually getting a lot better. And I think that TCU is in a good spot, because while Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, and Houston are doing very well right now in their football programs, it's going to take time to adjust. But I do believe that with the right recruiting and the right coaching staff, which I believe we have now, the new Big 12 could be ours to take. Someone's got to take it, and I think that we're going to be the front runner, because we're in the DFW Metroplex. We have the most pool money of any school. We have probably the nicest facilities of any school coming in the new Big 12. So we have that upper leg. We just need to take advantage of it. And I'm very excited to see BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, because all 4 of those schools are very much deserving of being the Big 12. They all have great fan bases that are going to be very fun to interact with. And, they just breed animals that want to play football. Look at Cincinnati right now. I root for all 4 of those teams right now. I was watching the BYU women's soccer shootout with Santa Clara while I was watching Sunday Night Football, my second screen. Those schools, that they all have good fan bases, good programs. It's all ran well. So I think that overall for the Big 12 is going to be a great move. A lot of parity, a lot of competition. It might not be the sexiest move by some people's standards, but I'd rather just watch good football than see a team with a image that's not holding up to what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely. And just switching gears briefly, earlier in the show, you mentioned how Quinn Ewers is touring TCU's campus right now, or pretty darn soon. He's the number 1 quarterback in the country right now from his class, and this would be a huge pickup for TCU. What have you heard about his recruitment here, and how much of a shot do you think TCU has in actually getting him?
Well, I told everyone yesterday, I was like, this is a very big day for TCU, and we should take it very seriously. Quinn Ewers is the best quarterback prospect since Vince Young. And he's higher ranked than Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, who are the number 2, number 3 recruits of all time out of the quarterback position. I think it tells a lot about this coaching staff that he's on this campus. And while I really don't think that we are going to get Quinn Ewers, I think he's going to listen. I mean, Sonny Dykes has the track record. Honestly, when you look at, he's considering 3 schools: Texas Tech, TCU, and Texas. So of those 3, who has the best quarterback success? Joey McGuire has only coached Charlie Brewer and Jerry Bohannon. That's not anything that really Quinn Ewers can base anything off of. The only reason why he's really considering Tech is because his dad is actually really good friends with McGuire, and his high school coach is affiliated with the Texas Tech program. So that's the main reason why he's strongly considering Tech. He grew up a Texas fan, and that was his original commitment. But the interesting thing is that his main recruiter out of high school was Brian Carrington, who's currently on TCU's staff. So I think we have a shot. I just wouldn't bet on it. If I had to give you, I would probably say we have a 5 to 10% chance. I don't know what Dykes, Carrington, samples, all that we're going to say to him. I don't know what kind of treatment he's going to get. I expect he's going to get A-list, top list we can give him. But the frankly, the matter is, this kid knows who he is. He literally went to Ohio State, made $3 million, and came back. If we can pitch to him that he'll start basically from day one, he'll have the athletes to succeed, all this other stuff, then maybe we can get him. But I frankly think that at the end of this, he's going to be touring Texas. But for today, he's only looking at one school, and that's TCU. And I think we need to enjoy that. And, fans for one day can think for the whole entire day, we have a shot of getting the best quarterback prospect in our generation.
Yep.
For sure. It's certainly fun to think about at the very least.
It's a very fun thing to think about.
It's very fun to think about at the very least. We appreciate you coming on the show, but before you go, we got some quick questions for the road, so we're going to go ahead and do those now. Who's your favorite superhero?
Iron Man.
There you go. You got a favorite movie?
I have a lot of favorite movies, but I think my go-to movie is that I can always watch is Dazed and Confused, Matthew McConaughey.
There you go.
Nice. Okay, now who is the greatest NBA player of all time?
I'm from Chicago, and I love Michael Jordan, but I truthfully do think it's LeBron James.
Wow. All right.
That's bold.
Now,
I wrote a paper on it to get into the sports broadcast department. That was the prompt: is who's better, LeBron James? Who's the best player of all time, LeBron James or Michael Jordan? And I wrote the LeBron one. And one of the teachers actually said that he read it and that he actually changed his opinion because of what I wrote. So
that's pretty gutsy. Anyways, what is your go-to gas station snack on a road trip?
A red Slurpee with Lifesavers.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go. You got favorite musical artist?
Favorite musical artist. My Spotify rap. I think my Spotify rap said it was Kanye West. So I'm probably either Kanye or Juice WRLD. Those are my two favorite.
Okay, and last one, Nicolas Cage or Keanu Reeves movies.
Ooh. See, it depends on how I'm judging the movie. I think Nicolas Cage's movies are better produced, but Keanu Reeves movies are always so much cooler to watch. I'll go Keanu Reeves.
All
Nice.
right,
Good
well,
choice.
Keanu Reeves. I agree with you on Keanu, actually. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, Alston. Again, you can find him on KTCU The Choice Mondays from 6 to 7 or 6 to 8?
6 to 7.
6 to 7 Mondays. Check him out there. Thank you so much for joining us, Alston. Have a good one.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Austin. See you later.